When people think about your typical anti-large monsters, the Charybdis is not one that usually comes to mind, but it's definitely an okay choice in certain matchups. It's not self-regenerating like the Hydra is, but it does have poison, anti-large AP damage, 30 bonus versus large, which is quite considerable, boosting that sweet melee attack up to 85 when hitting large targets. But let's go ahead and take a look at the builds here. This replay submitted by Coops some time ago, just now getting around to casting it. Bretonnia versus Dark Elves. He's got Malice Darkblade and a Fire Sorceress, already casting some Burning Head in the front line there. Bleak Swords and Dread Spears for a front line. And then the Charybdis, of course. Some cavalry supporting on the flanks here. We've got Cold One Knights and Dark Riders. Some more Dark Riders here. And it's going to be 2 Cold One Knights, more Dark Riders over here for Bretonnia. King Lewin up in the sky. Nice wide build of Men-at-Arms. We've got some mobs protecting on the wings. I say protecting, mostly with their faces. We've got, Men-at-Arms with polearms, spearmen in the back, some archers as well. Mix of knights here, some knights, errant, and questing knights, including defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis, companions of Cornell over there, and the Damsel of Life, of course, to heal those elite calves. Personally, I'm going to give a quick criticism, friendly criticism, of this Bretonnia build right off the bat. Knights of the Realm are, in my opinion, the best choice for them right now, especially in a matchup with Dark Elves where you expect some low armor targets, some high armor targets. They're just generally very cost-effective against a multitude of things, and I think, I don't know, maybe having one Questing Knight is a good idea, but just generally I think you could kind of merge the Questing Knights and the Knights Errant to become all Knights of the Realm. Let's see here, Hydra charging straight up the center. Doesn't have Malice nearby for support. He's off blending up some Men-at-Arms, so the Charybdis here is going to be a little bit, I mix them up. See, Charybdis here going to be a little bit vulnerable to Lewin, but forces a bit of a blob for a nice burning head there. Will definitely torch some of those low armor units, leads to the spearmen getting terrified there. But the Charybdis definitely taking some damage, healing from Bretonnia, of course, as well. Keep those questing knights nice and topped up. They are counteracting the Cold One Knights fairly well here. The Cold One Knights getting a decent charge in there, but definitely not going to be great in sustained combat against Questing Knights. Questing Knights' higher stats will definitely come through and show there. Out on the flanks here, though, this is a pretty good situation. 2v1. These Cold One Knights, we'll see how they do. I'm actually curious. I don't know if they're 100% going to beat the Questing Knights here, just purely based on positioning. The fact that they also have lower model count means they don't actually outnumber these companions as heavily as they might otherwise if they were sort of traditional cavalry, right? But yeah, companions 50 melee attack, 48 melee defense. The Cold One Knights definitely much worse sustained combat stats, even with the Primal Instincts juicing up their melee attack a little bit there, but obviously significantly cheaper than the Companions of Cornell. Pretty close to the same cost as the base Questing Knights, though, and right now they are having a tough time, but at the very least, pressuring some of these units. We've also got beautiful play by these Dark Riders in the backline as well, chasing routing units, cleaning up a lot of these cheap archers, which, I mean, relatively cheap. They're not crazy cheap. They're relatively expensive as well. I mean, in the typical 400 cost range of archers, but that low leadership does make them vulnerable to get cleaned up by a unit like Dark Riders. Speaking of which, they're going to get a nice supporting charge in here as Malice dukes it out with Lewin in the center. Nice big sort of crone, going to debuff all these units. Those poor Dark Riders do have their power spike from Murderous Prowess, of course. Nice offensive boost to all Dark Elf units. But we'll see. It's definitely very close still. Anyone's game, certainly. And that Fire Sorceress having to run away from Lewin. The Charybdis is quite slow. I would say probably the biggest thing for a lot of monster types outside of dragons, like you see how slow that thing just turned right there? I think a lot of monster types need just a general responsiveness boost in terms of speeding up their turn speed substantially, just making them more responsive overall. Similar to what they did to dragons, maybe alongside a small mass boost to certain monster types. Something weird going on with the lighting as well on this Charybdis here on this map. Looks much better from certain angles than others, but anyway. Yeah, the Charybdis and Hydra both, since they share similar animation sets. To be honest, like the Stegodon, there's a few other monsters that are just painfully slow to turn and to, issue orders onto. Here, though, I mean, obviously the Cryptis just matched up against Lewin 2v1 with Malice. That is going to be a lot of stopping power that Lewin cannot handle. Wisely tries to pull away there, utilize his speed to good effect. We take a wider look at the battlefield here. It's kind of still mostly a wash. Dark Elves seem to be taking a slight numbers advantage on mobility, but the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis here counteracting those Dark Riders as they try and go after the Peasants in the back line. See Lewin also dropping down here, trying to get a terror route. Perhaps? Nope. Switches directions. Dark Elves still have a pretty strong presence here in the center, and the Dark Elves' leadership on their basic infantry is going to carry quite significantly here as they hold while Bretonnian infantry will rout. Nice pick, though. Lewin trying to get after the caster, maybe getting a little greedy. Nope. It's relatively safe hit-and-run attack there as he gets back up into the air, going to continue chasing. Sorceress definitely just needs to stay close. This is exactly what Koops needs to do. Just keep that Sorceress right next to Malice and the Charybdis here so they can protect and all fight together. And then, yeah, just try and maybe move around, go after some high-value targets if you can. Like right here, you've got this Damsel who's probably going to get routed by the Dark Riders anyway, but the Charybdis and character squad could go collapse here, but potentially risky splitting up these characters if this Fire Sorceress gets caught out by the Companion. She's going to have a very bad time. And the Companions are just generally a threat in this situation, right, to a lot of the high-value targets. Malice, I mean, the way to lose Malice here would be to get him isolated against Lewin and the Companions in the late game, right? Beyond that, Bretonnia doesn't have a lot of great tools for dealing with Malice here. But again, just keeping these three all together is smart. Try and keep some infantry nearby to support as well. Dark Elves' mobility has finally mostly kicked the can. It looks like the Dark Riders did run out of steam eventually. But let's see. A little bit of healing together on Lewin and the Companions. Companions just charging into some Bleak Swords there. Not the most efficient engagement for them. I would definitely keep them like right underneath Lewin and fight all together. Right now, with Malice kind of isolated slightly away, Lewin's going to try and drop on the Charybdis here, but given that they're kind of in the woods, I'm not sure that, yeah, he's not going to be able to get away from Malice, and the way that this is positioned here, set up a beautiful rear charge angle for Malice Darkblade as the Charybdis slowly turns around here. Oh, there it is. Malice Darkblade getting a charge. Lewin's going to have to try and pull away. Now, he did rout the Charybdis, which will make his job a little bit easier. He's just got to outrun Malice, who is now going to get screened by the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis. Now that he's back up in the air, though, Defenders switch targets, chase these guys off. Let's see. Lewin's going to drop down and go after that Fire Sorceress. The archers are also shooting her, which is a great idea. No, they're actually shooting the Bleak Swords. I was going to say, shooting the Fire Sorceress is actually a great idea. She's got almost no armor. It's a decently valuable target to be trying to snipe out here, but things are looking a little bit grim for Koops. Besides Malice, he really doesn't have a lot left on the field, right? Bretonnia is kind of taking advantage with their infantry numbers, even though the leadership of Dark Elves is definitely superior. They got some healthy-ish Dread Spears, rather, right here, but Mobility's heavy cavalry advantage in the late game has allowed them to clean up a number of units in different areas. Yeah, even Sorceress now getting chased off again. Let's see. We're going to fast forward slightly and keep a nice wide view of this cleanup phase. Sorceress gets absolutely killed by Lewin. Lewin again goes for a risky drop, trying to finish off the Charybdis. And while I get this to a degree, I think he's maybe pressing a little bit here. Needs to be a little bit more patient and just, you know, come like maybe reunify with these infantry, get a side charge, try and isolate the Dread Spears, and just keep picking away units that are isolated, right? And then, or at the very least, try and get the Companions in here before Lewin makes his dive on the Charybdis so that they can be distracting, screening, and punching Malice. You know, all three of those things very effectively. But even still, Malice looks like he's going to go try and solo them out as Lewin does drop. So kind of what I was saying in the late game, the way to lose Malice potentially here would be to get him gooned by King Lewin and the Companions. That said, Malice, as long as he gets his transform off, has a pretty good shot of winning. His ability set's going to allow him to deal significant damage to a blob like that. But the key is he needs to get the transform off before Malice gets killed, and Malice gets getting pretty close to his healing cap already here. So, yep, there's the transform. Very timely. Zarkan pops up, and that Reaper of Souls will do a lot of damage, like I said, to a blob. It's meant, I think, the damage scaling, if we can check it here. Yeah, Reaper of Souls is max. Let's see here. As we kind of watch these guys fight it, I'll get the camera nice and close. See if I can actually read this tooltip here. Damage per second, strong versus single combatant and character, right? So it is going to be single target damage focused, but that also means it's great at just killing off cavalry models, and in general, a blob of characters and cavalry is going to be an ideal place to use that ability. So, yeah, Zarkan, very scary. The best thing for Bretonnia to do would be to try and kite here. So, like, leaving these spears, I would probably just run the companions straight towards Lewin, make sure they stay with him. The damsel's fast enough that she could stay out in front of Malice, and just keep kiting him around and waiting for the summon timer to degrade. Probably be the best way of doing it, but instead the companions get a little bit caught up in combat here. They're going to take some losses, not anything too crazy, but let's see. Maybe the companions and Lewin are still enough together to get the job done, but again, a little bit of a disjointed attack from Bretonnia as the companions are slightly off on their timing, and because Lewin's health is so low, it's not going to take much of a mistake for him to rout here, and even just a couple of hits puts his leadership very, very low, so got to be careful. Spears and companions finally moving in. Now would be a good time for King Lewin to get up and around on another cycle charge, though. Looks like he's going to try and maybe terrify away those Dread Spears. Another Reaper of Souls is being used, which did not hit Lewin, so I guess good to not necessarily get all your high-value targets hit by that, but still, things are starting to turn around as Malice does more and more damage. I think Lewin has just taken too much damage at this point. We'll see. We're going to fast forward a little bit more as Zarkan makes his final stand here. The companions doing their best. Even the lowly Spearmen-at-Arms here helping out. And yeah, Lewin should be cycle charging this entire time pretty much. Like, yes, it's risky for him to do so. If he takes even one or two hits, it could be potentially disastrous, but I mean, he can pretty safely, especially with the companions in there, get a hit and disengage, right? Especially if you're really crispy with your micro and timing. But let's see here. Bretonnia right now maneuvering away, letting their infantry units get shattered. And, you know, just again, a little bit sloppy on the endgame timing. Will it end up mattering, though? It's going to be super close. Let's just put it into cinematic cam. And let the sunset play out. Wow, looks like it was actually a victory for Bretonnia as Malice just barely goes down there. So even with some slightly missed timings, it's still enough with the companions and Lewin to finish off Malice at the end of the day. So quite a powerful combination. Again, I might have altered this Bretonnian composition somewhat, but at the same time, I mean, I can't really argue too much with the results. The companions, of course, carrying very heavily against some high-value targets with Lewin's support. These two units are going to be the primary value cows, if you will, for the value trains for this army. Although I have to say, Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis also very cost-effective. They're sort of like Knights of the Realm for, I mean, they're basically the same cost now, actually. It's not that much of a discount, to be honest. We can look at that in just a second here and make a comparison. But, yeah, the Men-at-Arms with Polearms also very cost-effective, contribute nicely. A lot of value on these Spearmen-at-Arms, too, which is interesting to see. Not something you see every day. Love this Bretonnia army here from Boojilicious, who is also a frequent submitter of replays on this channel. This is probably from the Vermin League, I would have to guess, from Coops. I haven't really talked too much about Vermin League. I'm planning on doing some motion of it very soon. But, yeah, if any of you guys who are submitting replays, if it is a Vermin League game, if you tag it as such, I will try to call it out if I remember. But anyway, for Coops here, Malice almost gets it done at the end of the day. That was so close with Zarkan. And, you know, Winds of Magic-wise, I definitely like Lore of Fire to a degree, but I almost think, you know, we'll look at that in just a second. I have some thoughts about Dark Elves magic. The Cryptis does actually pay for itself as well, which is nice to see. I mean, they're not the most expensive monster in the world. I mean, they're not necessarily like an elite high-tier monster by any means, but definitely can get some work done. Dark Riders also used to great effect here, chasing routing units. I think the biggest letdown here was by far the Cold One Knights, who just, yeah, they're low HP. I mean, they're better than they were before, certainly, but they're low HP, low model count. Comparison to other cavalry really hurts them when they're facing off against the best cavalry in the game, which Bretonnia, generally, if you take all together, does have. But anyway, let's look at Dark Elf magics real quick. I just have some thoughts kind of end here. You have some decent options with Dark Elves when looking at Winds of Magic. You know, from a hero's perspective, taking Dark Magic doesn't make as much sense when you don't have a caster that can get extra Winds of Magic or otherwise needs the self-healing from Soul Stealer, right? Like, it makes a lot more sense to have Soul Stealer when you have Marath, you can cast like 6, or if you have Malekith who could use the self-healing, really benefits him. Might still be worth taking, though. I don't know. It is something to consider, like Chill Wind to help control movements and deal damage against infantry, and then Soul Stealer to deal damage against cavalry. Fortunately, you don't have access to Lore of Metal, which is a little bit sad. It would be really good in this matchup for Dark Elves to have Lore of Metal against Bretonnia, I think. Death is kind of another option here. A little bit boring, but just Spirit Leeching Cavalry down, or Fate of Yuna on a specific high-value target, like those Companions of Cornell. It will bait a heal if your opponent's paying attention, or if they're not, then you can deal a lot of damage to them. But I was going to say, I think probably the one I'd most go for, maybe. I'd have to try it out a little bit myself and see, but Melkos Mystifying Miasma, if you're consistently casting this over the course of a long battle, it's actually more damage per magic has more damage per magic efficiency than something like Fate of Yuna, not to mention also has a speed debuff, which kind of helps control the movements of Bretonnia's cavalry a little bit. So I would probably work from there, and then Enfeebling Foe is a nice one to have as well. You could also take Penumbral Pendulum, better than Burning Head in a lot of ways. It has been nerfed, but it's still quite good, especially against lines of light infantry, like Bretonnia will tend to bring. But anyway, that's it for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.